So I would like to introduce Diana Moldavsky. She's my all-time friend and now a colleague. And Diana is a partner at 500 Startups, which, as all of you know, it's an early-stage fund and accelerator, one of the top accelerators, actually. For over 15 years, she was on the other side where you currently are. She was an entrepreneur and sort of working in the business world, so she knows very well how you feel. David Tsao is a pioneer, a believer, and a passionate entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. He's the founder and CEO of F50. That is an early-stage fund for companies that are moving from sort of early stage into a growth stage. Prashant Shah, a managing director of Thai LaunchPad, an accelerator for enterprise startups. Prashant started investing since 2001, and he previously was with Hammer Wimbledon Venture Partners. And Ilya, who just introduced himself here, partner at Y Combinator. Ilya also was on the other side where you are. He was an entrepreneur and the founder of Parse that was sold to Facebook for $85 million. And so now he's an investor. OK, guys, I didn't have this in the prepared questions list, but I want you to tell me a story of a company that you encountered or entrepreneur that was most exciting, most remembered for you, and that you can share and we can all laugh. Yeah. Something that you sort of remembered for a long time. Go ahead.
I'll start. I think what just pops up right away is the youngest entrepreneur here at SVOD. And we just talked about him, so I'm looking forward to, he's doing a fintech startup. He's 11 years old. Help me with the name.
12, Eric?
Eric, yeah. So, I'm looking forward to speaking with Eric more, and it's amazing to see entrepreneurship starting at this age, and that people at this age can pitch much better than many entrepreneurs that have much more experience. So I'm very excited and impressed with that.
Okay, sure. So I met a great entrepreneur recently. He has a similar background with. I was a programmer. I was a programmer for a very long time. He also was a programmer. What he's doing recently is a startup. Use a programming technique to fix your body, called ImmuneSoft, fix your immune system. It's invested by Peter Sales, Breakout Lab. He's very passionate. He's been doing this one for a while. I wonder why a programmer is thinking about to improve the human body. So I'm really impressed by his passion and energy.
I don't know if this was one specific entrepreneur or not, but I will say that the ones that are most memorable are the ones that come in and just have these crazy, ridiculous financial charts where they think they're going to do $100 million of revenue in year one or maybe year two if they're really conservative.
I'm going to cheat a little bit and take some inspiration from the first answer. One of my favorite young entrepreneurs was a guy we hired at some point at Parse named Michael Saman, and he had a game on Parse that he was using to support his entire family at the age of something like 14 or 15, and I was really inspired, and I thought that was amazing. Now he's doing very well at Facebook, and I think has changed, the course of his life at a very young age.
Well, great. Okay, so to serious questions now. We'll look at a lot of companies, and we've recently noticed new trends in education, and obviously a big trend in IoT. So for you, what are the new trends in the industry, sort of where you specifically looking into, what are you focusing on, and what are your predictions on where the industries will go?
So
Yeah, Diana, you have to start.
There are two different things. Like there's one that what I look at, and then there's another what I think is really sort of the new and exciting things. So I'll talk about that. So I'm really excited about bots. With Facebook Messenger platform opening recently, and I am seeing more and more startups in this for the bot, the Messenger bot ecosystem. So I think we'll see a lot in education and HR and maybe some gaming there and many different things in bots. And then I think it's really early at the moment, but in the next 5 years, we'll see a lot happening in the space to the point, I think, where what we saw in 2007 when the App Store opened up. So I think that's a new platform, and the apps will now have their own bots. And the other space that I'm also very excited about is VR, and I think that's even longer trend. And so I love what the guys at Facebook and Oculus are doing, for example. And but I think that's more like 5 to 10 years till we really see that platform developing. So those are the two things that I'm watching and very interested in.
Okay, so it is an extremely difficult task to predict which sector is going to win in the future.
That's our job, huh?
Huh?
That's our job.
Well, yeah, it is. So it is difficult, but for us is that it's typically if everybody knows it's hot, probably it's too late for angel investors to get in. So what I'm trying to understand what is not hot.
Okay. Okay, let's approach it from the other direction. What is not hot?
It's also a difficult task because you can see many sectors are very hot. But how do you figure out actually it's hot but not hot enough for you to jump in? Timing is extremely difficult. For myself, I'm looking for a medical healthcare field and also artificial intelligence field. So still feel like lots of new companies created without enough innovation, but still get lots of investor traction. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? But for the sector, I believe it's a good thing. So we can find more opportunities to evaluate the new innovation.
No, Anna, this question comes up a lot on investor panels, and the dirty little secret I think that many entrepreneurs may not be aware of is when you ask people, investors especially, what's hot, what are the sectors they predict will be interesting, they're usually thinking back about the last 3 or 4 investments that they've made, and they'll tell you that that's what's hot because that's what they're trying to push. The reality is, speaking for myself, I can't speak for everybody on the panel, but if I was smart enough to know the answer to that question, I'd be out there in the audience rather than trying to sit up here and make those predictions. I'm barely smart enough to know what I'm doing in my own job, let alone what they're doing in theirs.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'll talk my book, which I think is, I like VR, I like all that stuff. I think one interesting space that's not talked about enough, or one interesting trend that I look out for a ton, is APIs abstracting very complex, annoying, dirty business processes. So I think one popular example of this is Stripe, although there were competitors before. One contemporary one that I really like is a company called Checker. It's an API for background checks, super boring, super not sexy, but makes a ton of money and fulfills a need in an ecosystem that is increasingly reliant on that kind of background check. Another company is Clearbit, which is an API for like sales intelligence data, so you can essentially look up people's contact information, qualify leads, even look at fraud rates and things like that for various companies. Backed by an API, can integrate into Salesforce, anything else. So I'm really excited about APIs abstracting big, messy business processes that developers increasingly have to deal with, but don't have good alternatives for.
We've all noticed that in the last year or so, the markets were going down, and sort of for venture funds, it was harder and harder to raise their funding, and so consequently for startups, it was harder and harder to raise their money, especially sort of Series A, right? And so for all entrepreneurs in the audience, I would advise if you have any chance to raise as much as you can, as early as you can, go for it. So can you talk a little bit about sort of your predictions on this issue? Let's start with Ilya. Let's give Diana a break.
Sure. I mean, there's clearly sort of a pullback in like the SaaS public markets, and people reacted to that. I don't know. A lot of the startups I deal with don't really get that impacted. I think the best startups are still getting funded at seed and Series A. The B stage is definitely hard right now, and I think that's where a lot of people falter. But it's supposed to be hard. So I don't know. I guess my advice is fairly non-unique. Raise as much money as you can. Plan for leaner times, and think about how the heck you're going to make money.
It does mean, reflecting back on what Ilya's saying and maybe building a little bit on top of it, what that means for entrepreneurs is if it's going to be a little bit tougher to raise money going down the road, then you have to figure out for your industry, for your landscape, the market that you're going after, how do you show more progress in your particular area? So whether you're doing bots, whether you're doing API, whether you're doing, whatever it is, you have to figure out how you're going to stand up from the rest of your competitors just a little bit more.
Okay, so I'd like to look at this winter from a different angle. The winter has been officially announced in last Q4, so now it's almost over 6 months right now. So a great investor always go against the trends. This means winter actually is considered the best time for a venture capital to go buy because from a seller's market to the buyer's market. So the investors want to find better deals. The other one is that last 3 years, lots of venture funds actually raised lots of money. They significantly reduced their activity last 6 months to 1 year. They probably going to reduce their activity still next 2 to 3 months, but they cannot hold there forever. They have to spend the money because they raise money to invest. So my prediction is that actually it's spring very soon. However, if you are in the position, right, you're going to run out of money, that's a pretty bad position to be in. If you're really good, you should have enough money to run through the winter, and don't worry about raising money at this point. Just go ahead and build a great product.
I think that like Ilya was saying, the good companies will continue to get funded, and especially at the earlier stages. Just overall, I don't think that people would just be throwing money at any company as it happens during a hype, but overall, I think great companies will still get funded. And actually, the latest stats I remember seeing was that U.S. funds in Q1 alone had like the record fundraising, 12 billion, I believe, and that's 57 funds, and that's 59% higher than the year before that. So, the money is there, and it's just going to be picking the best deals.
So when we're looking at the companies, and since they're very early stage, it's very hard sort of to do a very deep due diligence, right? So basically what we're doing, we're mostly looking on the team and on the people behind the company. And obviously, looking at the people, we look at how they respond, what work they have done, have they identified the problem, what is their solution, what are their customers, and on and on. So question to you, what's important for you, sort of this team versus product? This is the question that comes up all the time. What's more important for you? Can you all comment on that?
Sure, I think it's all important. I think in sort of tougher times, just an amazing team is getting funded less. I think that was happening a little bit more maybe 2 years ago. It's all important. On the other hand, the team is harder to change than your idea. And so in the grand scheme of things, if it's an amazing set of folks that I think can execute in their space and have unique insight on it, they haven't quite figured everything out, maybe the monetization's not there, I think you can let that ride and you know, plan that they'll figure it out. It's much harder to do that if the idea is perfect, everything makes sense, but the people are like, I just don't know if they're the ones that can do this. So in the grand scheme of things, team's probably more important, but the best companies have both.
It's very contextual. I mean, in some cases, if you're dealing with a white space where it's truly breakthrough technology, nothing has ever been done in that space before, then the technology tends to play a little bit more front and center. But most markets, it tends to be the team because it's much more about execution. Once you get the idea going, once you get the programming started, the coding, et cetera, or building the prototype or whatever hardware product you're building, then after that, it's much more about sales and distribution and actually differentiating from the competition, raising money, those kinds of things.
To me, team, very simple. A team can manage lots of unknowns. If the product is, especially in earlier stage startup, the product in most cases not so well defined. So need a great team to bring from concept to actually first, second, third, maybe 10th iteration.
So while I think both are important, and ideally I like to see a great team with a great product where the product has been launched and there is significant early traction, I think if you have to pick one out of the two, the product will probably change from early stage till later stages. It's an iterative process, and it can get pivoted, and that happens a lot. But it's much harder to change people and to change the team if you really need to replace it. So people at the end of the day. Yeah.
If I can just add one more thing onto that question on team versus product. The other reason that I think you're hearing team is really the critical thing that investors look for, it's because the teams, the companies will change. But if you find a good team and a good entrepreneur, you tend to invest in them. So that's how you build the longer term relationship. I mean, the classic example is Twitter.
And basically, just always looking to find smart people and then help them with both money and the network and experience to create something great. Yeah.
So what is a definite no for you when you're making investment decision?
So again, if as we just talked about people being so important, so
So say people are great. Okay, so we agreed to the fact that
no, I know, but
it's a good team. Now, what's a definite no?
So that's what I'm saying. Like if I really don't like something when it comes to the team, then that will be a definite no. Like if the founders have ego, if they think that their product is amazing and it hasn't been launched and they're not willing to listen, they're not coachable, things like that, it's usually a no.
A red flag.
So another pretty popular, I call it a mistake or something, many earlier stage startup founder made is that they recruit some pretty famous people as a consultant, pay them a pretty high fee to use them to convince the investors. So even some, is one. The other one is that another mistake, some founders said, okay, well, if I raise this amount of money and this big guy can join me, that's typically the red flag.
So I invest mostly in enterprise, and the critical question that we always try to find out when we're talking to teams is there's two questions, and they have to be able to answer this, and if they can't, then it's not an investment for us. One is, what is with the market you're selling and the pain that you're trying to solve, what is it that's going to cause the customer to actually to take action and want to solve that pain? And then the second question is, if they want to solve that pain, then why will they pick you? So most entrepreneurs do a fairly decent job of answering why me. They'll say, well, we have this feature, we have this algorithm or whatever, and this is why we're better than the competition or the alternatives. But that first question is very difficult to answer, especially in the enterprise space, because most enterprise users will live with the pain. They don't have enough motivation to actually change it. And so getting to that underlying reason of understanding why somebody will actually make a change with whatever issue they've got. That's really key for us.
I try not to make any hard and fast rules, but I think one that comes to mind is I tend to like to invest in technology differentiated things, people who are builders, who are invested in the process of creating something. And so if it's a team that has outsourced their development, they plan to hire someone later, I just kind of walk away from that. I think that in addition to just wanting to work with people that like to build and build things that are actually differentiated on the technology side, I think actually one of the main things that companies fail at is attracting enough good engineers. So even if you plan to do it later, if you don't start there, it's hard to imagine you'll catch up, and your competitor who is from an engineering background will probably win out in the end.
So say you invested in a company, right? And then you're working with the company, spending your sort of time, and you get to know the company better and better, and over sort of advising, right? And then you see something is going wrong, or you see some mistakes that the founders make. So can you share with us sort of the mistakes that a lot of times happen, and that you see them, and you know that's a trend for the trouble?
Yeah, I'll give you one. So a lot of the founders that we invest in tend to be first-time founders. And one characteristic, a good characteristic, by the way, of first-time founders is that they have a product background. They're either product managers, they may have been engineers, et cetera. So these are good characteristics. The challenge is that when you move from being a good product person in a large company or even another startup, and you move into becoming a founder, then one of the critical skills that you have to have is the ability to sell. And that means the ability to sell both to investors, to customers, of course, as well as to employees. So one of the mistakes that we see every now and then is when founders, first-time founders especially, get caught in this rut of trying to get a customer, and they help develop the product with the entrepreneur, and they really get caught up in the whole notion of solving the problem, and they forget to ask for the money. So driving to revenue, especially in the enterprise space, and understanding what it takes to get the sale, to figure out who your champions are, who are the influencers, just the classic sales process. A lot of times this gets forgotten.
I think that also exists on the consumer side. A lot of people come from Google or Facebook or some other company that someone 10 years ago figured out the distribution, and since then it's had a great brand. A lot of these people come into a startup and assume that if they build it, people will come and use their product. But in reality, most people only use like 5 to 7 consumer applications per day, and breaking into that is extremely difficult. And so you have to have something that's unique about how you're going to do it that's often missing.
So I saw many earlier stage startups made a mistake on recruiting. So other than money, of course, the building team is the biggest challenge, the first challenge there. So recruiting right people, it is extremely important for the growth of the company. Especially the churn in the team in earlier stage has extremely high impact to the value culture of the startups. What I saw is that many companies, once they raise some money, they will get excited. They hired lots of pretty, we call it looks resume good people, actually not culturally fit, which bring high cost for the company to manage them.
One of the things I've seen recently is entrepreneurs that are trying to raise funding and running after the highest valuation, which can be just because it's an investor that is looking to have deals and doesn't have much access to deals, and is from a different market and willing to give a higher valuation. But so basically just running after that at an early stage and not thinking about, well, how are they going to be able to raise here in Silicon Valley when they're looking for more money next time, and what is it going to lead? So I think entrepreneurs really need to have a longer term vision, not just thinking about what's going to happen right now and who's going to get the highest valuation. So can you just in a few words define your ideal entrepreneur? For example, we just had Sami Inkinen earlier today, the founder of Trulia, and so when he was talking about sort of himself, he said, well, I had this burning passion inside.
which drove him all the way through. So when you're looking at the entrepreneur, you're talking to entrepreneur, what's your ideal? Yes, that's the one.
So I definitely love seeing people who have this passion and drive, and when the business is coming from their hobby or it's coming from so basically something that they live and breathe their whole life, or they're solving a problem that they or their family has faced, and that's really like super important to them, has some kind of a meaning, and besides that they have the right experience, or the total combined team has the right experience to actually execute on that passion and drive.
Okay, so because our fund actually has lots of international LPs, especially we have some LP from China. So one of the things we particularly looking for is that the entrepreneur has global vision. Global vision means that not only see the local market, but also be able to see the global market, and also have the capability, be able to manage the cross different cultures. Silicon Valley is a very diversified environment. We are looking for founders who can deal with different type of cultures.
I think the gold standard for me is when I'm meeting with a founding team, I think that's kind of rolling at the back of my head at the end of the day. I'll go through the analysis that everyone goes through, team, technology, market, all of those great things, references, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I need to conclude that I am going to invest in these founders' next company as well. Mm-hmm. And if I don't come to that conclusion, I won't invest in this one.
That's a great one.
I think my prototype is charming hackers with chips on their shoulders.
Of course. We had Noam, we had Nir Zug, who was the first virus. He was developing viruses. So that's probably someone you would love to invest in, right?
I mean, those kinds of hackers are good. I mean, hacker in the more general sense, someone that builds things and tries to find loopholes in systems.
I really like when I see the founders with the characteristics that I described, and that it's so strong that it's contagious. The passion and their love for what they're doing, it's contagious, and you basically become in love with them and what they're working on, and you really want to help. Then I think it's to your point about, like, you phrase it well, that it's you want to invest in their next startup. I haven't thought about it like that, but basically that I want to do anything I can to help them. Yeah.
Right. That's fair. So we're running out of time. The last question, one sentence. Your advice to first-time entrepreneurs. Ilya.
It's going to be hard. Everyone's company on the outside looks a lot cleaner and straightforward and successful than it really is on the inside. So just keep at it and know that whatever you're feeling, everyone else is feeling as well.
Hey, this is a really tough one to answer, Anna. I mean, it's a good question. But if you're a first-time entrepreneur, I think you just have to figure out your story. And what I mean by that is figure out whether you're bringing your startup to the investor because of your in-depth background in what you're doing, or because of some huge technology breakthrough that you have, or your ability to execute and outperform in sales and distribution, whether it's consumer or enterprise. But you have to have that story when the investor walks away that just says, oh yeah, I remember that team.
Okay, for the first-time entrepreneur, statistic side, the chance going to fail is over 90%. So
congratulations.
Do not do it for money. Only do it because you really enjoy, you love it.
Yeah. Only do what you love, and be ready to work really, really hard, like 7 days a week almost, and don't think about the millions and billions you're going to make, because chances are that you'll make it the first time are not that high. But you just really, it has to be your passion, and you have to be happy every day that you're working on it and the experience you're getting.
So the conclusion is that you should do whatever you like, enjoy the process, and we as investors are going to help you enjoy it and will enjoy it with you. Yay. Right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.